origin of Carrie.
Yes. So I thank you all for the warm welcome first. So I grew up all over the place, and I was not a military kid, but we moved around a lot. So basically, I was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey. My parents are from Puerto Rico, so I grew up speaking Spanish with my parents. They had only been in the States for maybe 2 or 3 years when I was born, and I spent a lot of time with my grandma, my abuela, who did not speak any English. So, but yeah, we lived all over. We were in New Brunswick, we lived in South Jersey. We moved around a lot. My dad pastored for a couple years, and he really would go into like these startup churches and like pastor there for a few years, and then they'd move him to like another church. I was raised in the Christian and Missionary Alliance, and that was like what my dad was raised in. So raised in the church, moved around a lot. And I am one of four siblings. So that's a little bit about me. But I'm the oldest girl. My brother's the oldest. So I've always been a natural caretaker. So I think that is like a very big thing for me. Always felt like I was always taking care of someone because I was like the oldest girl. But that's me.
Okay, and so your book is called Recreate Your Love. And so, of course,
Mhm.
I cannot go any further without introducing the love of your life. Carlos Vasquez is in the room, everybody. Can we give it up for Mr. Grace presence? You're not even, you're in Virginia Beach. And so I believe you're on a college visit. And so I'm just so excited that you took the time to join us. So, of course, now we just want to take a few minutes and hear about the Carrie and Carlos love story.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting one. So Carlos and I actually met in South Jersey. South Jersey became one of the places that I lived in the longest. But even though I lived in South Jersey, we still moved around South Jersey quite a bit. Literally, like I went to three different high schools, but elementary school, I went to like one, two, um, I guess like only it was only two, but no, in South Jersey, two in South Jersey. So anywho, we met my sophomore year of high school. We were high school sweethearts. Um, we were both in the Spanish club, and he had a girlfriend, and it was whatever. But I had just a little bit, just like back a little bit. I had gone through like a rough like seventh, eighth grade, and I had lost a lot of my friends. So I was out there being Carrie, being crazy. And so I came into high school kind of like stripped of all of my friendships. So um, my sophomore year, I meet him and we started dating. And so we dated from in high school into college. I went to his prom. He went to my prom. He's 2 years older than me. So I was a sophomore. He was a senior. I had to put that in there. Um, and when I went off to college, we broke up. And then met my ex husband. We were married for 10 years. And then when that ended, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but when that ended, Carlos and I reconnected and we got married and we had our daughter Ariana, who is now doing college visits, which is crazy to me. Um, but that is like a really fast version of our love story.
So, of course, because Carlos is in the room, if he wasn't, I wouldn't even pay attention. But is that how you remember it, Mr. Carlos?
Yes, you got it.
I already know what he's gonna go ahead. I know what you want to say. He wants to say something like, she reached out to me
That one is a good one.
after, like, yeah, go ahead.
So yes, after 10 years, somehow she remembered my mother's phone number, called my mama,
I had
asking
that
for
thing
me.
memorized.
Oh,
And then my mama told me about it. So then I'm like, really? So then I had to reach out. So that's why I started the reconnection piece of it. So it was her. Woo-hoo.
Yes. And he never got married, never had kids. So he,
Oh, Carrie, that story. Oh, that is
so
so.
he just, I mean, and like I said, I was divorced with 4 kids. So I came back to him with a lot. It wasn't like just me.
It
So
was a
you can
package.
imagine, yes, it was a lot. So you can imagine, I mean, he obviously, like, day one, like, loved these babies. And my kids, just to give you context, when we first started talking, my son was 1, my daughter was 2. I had a daughter that was 7 and a daughter that was 9. And so the ages were, and we got married when they were 2, 3, 8, and 10. Um, so it was a lot. So then he had to deal with like his family kind of like, really? I mean, he had a good career. He worked at Lockheed Martin. He had been in the military for all this time, in the reserves. So of course his family was like, hold up, you have so much going for you and you're taking on this project. Yeah, so it was a lot.
Beautiful project. It may not have looked like one at the start, but it turned out to be a beautiful project. So, Carrie, tell me why this book? Why this title? Who was this book for, in your opinion?
Yeah, so Carlos and I started, obviously we get back together and it is like dream come true, because we had a really great relationship in high school into college. And so I just always remembered that. It was a tough marriage, and so coming out of that and then reuniting with him was like, oh, finally back to like the love of my life. And then a year into our marriage, well, our daughter was born the year after we got married at 25 weeks. And she was in the hospital for 3 months. She weighed a pound and a half. And that we had already had some challenges, obviously, with like having the kids and all, but that just kind of added to everything, because she had a lot of medical needs. It was stressful. He was a new dad. I was an experienced mom. So I always wanted to tell Carlos how to handle the baby, and of course we'd get into arguments over it. So things just started going downhill. And then we were separated for a year and a half, for almost 2 years. We separated 7 years in. I think it was like 6 or 7 years into our marriage. We got separated. We did 4 years of therapy, counseling, and accountability with our church at the time, like our group leaders, care group leaders. And so it was like 4 years of trying to kind of get it together. And we were struggling. So I finally was like, I was done. And we'll get into it a little bit later, but I had been unfaithful and I moved out, took the kids, and we got separated. So after we get back together, which I think that story comes later, um, I just started to feel like the way I learned what love was, the way I was raised to see love, it just really wasn't it. It was just like my parents were just kind of like, hey, you're married, you just do the thing. It doesn't matter what you think or feel type. Like it was just not it for me. And I felt like there was something different. So as I started to really work on my healing and Carlos worked on his healing while we were separated, um, I just started to learn a lot of different things. God really started to show me a lot of different things. And I was like, I need to recreate love. I need to recreate what it means to love someone, what it means to be in marriage, what it means to be in a relationship, what it means to have friendship. Because I was raised where like women didn't really support women. So this was a reason why I lost so many friends, right? Like I was afraid to befriend women because I was always hurt by them. My mom and I had a bad relationship. So like I was hurt by mom, I was hurt by girlfriends. So I just really had to relearn like what is love? What does it look like? And how do I walk in that? So that's why I named it Recreate Your Love. And then that's why I felt called to write the book, because I was like, so many people are suffering and living in guilt and shame from like their life story or whatever. But God has, sometimes we just don't see it we just kind of take on the story we were given as a child, and we don't realize that we can recreate that.
And so, what was important that you just said was you were not only trying to recreate your love for and with your husband, but it also was for all the other relationships. And that's why
Absolutely.
we wanted people to come into this room who are not married at this time, because we all have relationships that need to be adjusted and recreated with our coworkers, our neighbors, our friends, our family members, our girlfriends, our associates. All of them can benefit from, I believe, from this book. So
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
about marriage. That is kind of what started it,
Mhm.
but our relationships that we all need to recreate. So let's just dive right in. Chapter one, you just hit us hard immediately. You don't even give us a chance to catch our breath. The first chapter is called Forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so I love how you define forgiveness. It's on page 5. You define it as forgiveness is releasing you, speak of yourself, releasing you from holding on to a wrong or hurtful act against you. Forgiveness is not saying what was done was right in any way, and it does not mean you even have to have a relationship with the person who wronged you. But, and here's the key, forgiveness frees you to move forward without holding on to extra baggage. And I think some of us may have heard it before. Forgiveness is for you.
Mhm.
Usually, some people don't want to give it is because they think they are somewhat excusing the person for what they did, but it's for you. Then on page 7, you talk about unforgiveness. Unforgiveness causes your thoughts and beliefs to be cloudy and unclear. It's like mold. It loves darkness and will grow if you don't kill it. So, in a book that you have called Recreate Your Love, why did you think it was necessary to tackle forgiveness and unforgiveness right out of the gate?
Yeah, so I mean, I can talk, but I don't necessarily like small talk. Like Carlos can tell you that. Like, I just like to get right to it. And also, when I started writing, this book started as a workbook. I called it a love book. So I started coaching groups in 2016, I think it was. And I would I ran a few Facebook groups that were Recreate Our Love, Recreate Your Love. But it was a workbook. So I like kind of like a course. And so I went through 7 weeks because I basically sat down and laid out what are the steps that I have taken to heal? What are the steps that I have taken to learn to love in a deeper level? I wanted to recreate my relationships with my children, how I mothered, it was just so many things. So the first thing that stood out was forgiveness. I was like, we can't move any further if there isn't forgiveness. And as I had mentioned earlier, just to make the story a little juicier, I had grown up in a family where there was infidelity, and so I saw the consequences, ramifications, the whatever you want to call it, of people being in relationship where there was infidelity, but they didn't get divorced or separate. And there was a price to pay, and I just watched how, the person that was unfaithful, they stayed, and but now they had to pay the price, like, for years and years and years. So, basically, I obviously later learned so many things, right? Like, what did that had to do with their upbringing and how they were raised and their hurts and so many things. But um it was there was no forgiveness, and I just saw it eating away at the marriage, eating away at the relationships, eating away at, like, the children. So but then I also saw it in my relationships. My first marriage, I was unfaithful in that marriage. We were married for 10 years. I always try to justify it with, I was married for 10 years before I cheated. But, the reality was, I was in this marriage. It was not healthy at all. I mean, he had been unfaithful like year 2, and I forgave, moved on. And then I was unfaithful year 10. and he proceeded to make announcements. I felt like I was a child again, like that little girl who was watching the consequences of infidelity. Now it was on me. And he went and basically made announcements and told the world, right? Um, and even after, I was even like willing to try to work things out again. I don't know why, but anyway, another story. So, coming into this marriage and having that falling for it again, 6, 7 years in, um, I was like, what is going on? So forgiveness and unforgiveness was like number one and key. And when we got back together and Carlos forgave me, and he's like, I forgive you. It'll take some time to work through things, but I forgive you. I just remember the weight that was lifted off of me because he was an image of Christ. And I don't think that I had ever really truly felt that. And in that moment, it was like, this is how Jesus, like how he forgives us, right? And it wasn't perfect and it had its stuff, but it was just so important to me. And I was like, if we can't get past forgiveness, and if we can't forgive, we can't move on. You might as well, it sounds drastic, but you might as well end the marriage. You might as well get rid of the relationships because they're just not going to be healthy. So that's why I started with that.
Then on page 8, you said that forgiveness can be broken down into forgiving yourself, your spouse slash partner, and others. So each area of this book that you've written will start with you. And I think that is the important part because some may be in unhappy relationships, whether it's a friend, a family member, or a spouse. And the instinct, the default response may be to say, I'm unhappy because of you.
Mhm.
I'm not getting fulfilled because of something that you're doing. But you are challenging us, I believe, in this book and saying that it's got to start with us. It's
Yeah.
got to start with us. And to kind of look at that man in the mirror and see, is there something that I am doing that is contributing to the toxicity of this relationship, of this marriage, of this relationship? And so I think that's very important. And so, thank you, Carrie Vasquez, for pointing the finger back at us. Appreciate that so very much.
Yes.
Helpful because I think it does begin with us. And so chapter 2 comes on and you continue with the heavy hitting. Chapter 2 is called Unconditional Love. And so I think on page 41, for those who have the book, we can reference it. Um, Love is love without conditions, without expectations, and without rules. And you say that is the purest form of love. Conditional love is not real love. Conditional love is about trying to control your environment and people in your life. This is usually an attempt to protect yourself. Love is about an understanding and respect for what each person wants and desires in their life. So I feel like that's a bit controversial, Carrie. Miss Carrie, because what
Mhm.
you're saying is love without expectations. And I think there may be some of us in the room who say, how are we supposed to love without expectations? So why would you kind of make that claim?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's funny because when I thought about this and I remember even when I wrote it, but I really had to kind of like go back as I was thinking of our interview. And I remember when I wrote this book, it took me like 2 years to finish it or whatever. I had an author that a author's coach, whatever you call it, that was helping me. But one of my biggest things was like I don't want to write like nonsense, right? I said I wanted to get right to it. And then I also wanted to be able to back what I said and live what I said. So, like, even like just a little bit about forgiveness and unforgiveness. Before I finished that chapter, I literally went to every single person that I could think of that I had wronged or had wronged me. And if I was able to reach out to them, I reached out to them to have a conversation. And if I wasn't, I practice what I did here in the book in terms of, I called it the F it list, but it was the forgive it list of writing out like, what was it that hurt me and how could I? So I just say that to say, when this came, I was like, what were the expectations that I had before all of this? I expected Carlos to be God or my father, one of the two things, because God can do everything, right? And I just wanted him to do it all. And my father felt like he just would get it all done. Like we could tell my dad, like, Dad, go to the store and just get XYZ. No questions asked. He went to the store, he got it, it came back, and it was perfect, right? Hey, Dad, the faucet's broken, fix it. It's fixed. Like, there's no, and everything's cleaned up. So I just had this expectation on Carlos that I felt like God really checked me when I was going through this journey to say, He is not your God and He is not your father.
Mm.
And as I started to really like dive into that and look up scripture, right? So, like, if we go to the Bible, and I won't read long, but it's just there's so many scriptures that talk about um, expectation. And maybe it's like playing on words, right? Because I believe that we need to express what is it that you want? What do you desire? And I can let Carlos know this is what I want, this is what I desire. Same thing with my kids. I can tell my kids, hey, this is what I want, this is what honors me and this home or whatever. They're either going to do it or they're not. And I've said to Carlos, like, it's okay if you can't do this, but if you can't do it, then let's hire someone to do it. Or if you can't do this, then where can we kind of contract it or get it done from someone else, right? But releasing him of the expectation to be able to do it all and meet all the needs. So, like Psalms 146:3 says, do not put your trust in princes in whom there's no salvation. Jeremiah 17:5, cursed is the one who trusts in man. Proverbs 13:12, hope deferred makes the heart sick. Like, there's so many scriptures that talk about that, but then also talk about your hope and your expectation being in God. So that really just, and I also, through this journey, I had a coach, and then I did a coaching certification. And through this coaching certification, I will never forget my coach who's coaching me, putting me on the hot seat. And I'm talking and sharing, well, my husband this and my kids this and this and that, and talking about these relationships. And he was like, you're so selfish. And I was like, whoa. And I'm like, I am the most selfless person in the room. Like, what are you talking about? You obviously don't know me. Like, that was my thought. But of course, I was in a space, I was coachable, right? So I was like, help me understand that, right? And he was like, you have all these conditions. You want your husband to do this and your kids to do this, and you love them with conditions as long as you do. And I was like, well, I just want them to say thank you. It's a condition.
Mm.
And I was like, just appreciation is a condition? Yes, it's a condition. But if you love them without condition and you clean your house without the condition that you have to keep it clean or da 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 da, that is unconditional. And it took me a while to really let that sink in. But when it did, I was like, okay.
Yeah, because I think on page 42, you kind of, I think it must have been through the realization and you accept it that, hey, you should love people without expectations. You say on 42, again, understanding the person you love will lead to you giving each other what each desire and want in your relationship. You may struggle with the thought of not having expectations, and some say that realistic expectations are acceptable, but who determines what is realistic?
Yeah.
It's really good.
Mhm.
Good. When we eliminate the expectation altogether, then we can replace it with an understanding of who we are and agree to honor and respect that. You
Mhm.
said a mouthful there. Now, here's the challenge though. Some of us are entering relationships and we don't know who we are.
Absolutely.
Discovered it. So therefore, how can we then ask for what we want when we don't know who we are? And then on top of that, the challenge is you're expecting the person to know what you want without even saying it.
Hmm.
They get upset when they don't do it. They don't know.
Right.
They don't
Right.
know. So that's why you're getting us in trouble here with this book. Because now we are responsible because we heard it and we read it. And
Yes.
now it's going to be up to us to change our lives for the better. I think there was one more page that I wanted to read, and I think it's on page 64 still under the title Unconditional Love. And again, it's page 64. When you are not meeting a need for love, connection, significance, or certainty, there will be an attraction to people or things that do fulfill those needs. And I think that may have been the perfect statement and segue into the infidelities that you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and the crazy part, I think when I think back to it, because like I said, I think I was dissecting because I didn't want to be back here again. I was like, I saw it in my family. I did this in my first, like, I saw it in my family. I did it in my first marriage. I did it in my second marriage. I don't, I can't be on this hamster wheel. I can't go back to this again. I can never do this again. And I hate saying never because I feel like the moment we say never is the moment that we're challenged, right? But I was like, God, keep me from this. How do I keep myself from ever? We all have a sin issue, right? We all have that thing. For you, it might be ice cream. For someone else, it might be cake. For someone else, it might be the bag of chips. For someone else, it might be sex. For someone else, it might be porn. Like, there's so many different, I call it your sin issue, your thing, right? And for other people, it's like, girl, that is not my thing, right? So, I really had to like fine tooth comb, like, Lord, reveal to me, show me what, because it wasn't sex that was my thing. I started having sex at a young age. I hated it. I hated it because it was just my way of feeling loved, right? I felt this hole, this gap of I don't feel loved at home. So if I got attention, I'm loved. Oh my goodness, what do you want? I'll give you anything, you know?
Mhm.
So sex wasn't my thing because I hated sex. It always felt like something I had to just give. So again, conditional love. I'll give you this and just love me. I'll give you this and just treat me a certain way. So that wasn't the thing. The thing was wanting to feel loved. And so I started picking it apart and I started to realize that as I would listen to certain music, it was like it would put me in this mode of like, oh, like, women empowerment, which is a wonderful thing. And it's what I do. I want to empower women. But I started to go down this road of like, yeah, like, no, I am worth this or da-da-da-da. Like, just this like attitude of like, and that just started to lead, oh, well, my husband ain't gonna do this or he ain't treating me like this, but now I'm going to work and these guys are like, girl, I it just I had to realize the things, and it was this music, and then it was the attention of people or of a man that was filling this need, but they weren't really filling it, right? I thought they were. And that's where the enemy just creeps in. So I had to keep that in mind because anytime I saw even a glimpse of, oh, wait, why am I listening to this music all of a sudden? I've been listening a lot to this, and that. Oh, what's being unmet? Where am I at? Am I good? Am I good? Right? And the moment like I started to see the signs that led me to where I would be in a bad place, now it's like my light bulb. And then it's like, oh, I got a compliment. How did I take that compliment? Thank you. Did it do anything else? Did I take it any further? So like I just started to really, and it started with just understanding what my needs that weren't being met. And yeah.
So I appreciate your transparency with all of that. I think it's not talked about enough.
Mm-mm.
People are that
Yeah.
with their feelings to admit what they're feeling, what they're missing, and how they're finding it in other places outside of their marriage. And so thank you for being.
Hmm. Yeah, no, thank you.
You're like I said from the beginning, you came right out the gate challenging us. But what I like about this book is it really is a workbook. I think, Kara, you said it started as a workbook,
Yes.
but every chapter she has space for journaling,
Hmm.
check-ins. In other words, times when you can look in the mirror and evaluate and compare where you are to what you just read and where the gaps are. So you have opportunities to write it down. She calls it love work. So she has check-ins, she has love work, she has journaling opportunities, and it comes after every chapter of the book. So this isn't a book that you just get to read and move on. This is actually soul work.
Hmm.
So that's why I feel that the book is so important. And thank you for writing it, Carrie. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, thank you.
Chapter three, and we're not going to go through every chapter, but there were just a few that I wanted to highlight. So, chapter three starts on page 75, and it's called Communication. And I feel like this is key, and you come right out the gate. Like you said, you don't like small talk. Right out the gate, listen and speak in a way they feel loved. I think you just shot us all right there because many times we communicate in a way that we think the other person wants to hear, but most of the time we communicate in the way that we want to be heard. It has nothing really to do with how the listener is feeling
Yes.
at all. And so I think on page 76, the very next page, let's go there. Um, I thought it was interesting that you state that the most important part of communication is how you listen. When you listen first, your response can be more understanding and grace filled. And if I were to take a poll of everyone in the room, I think most of us would say if we were in a, let's call it a maybe heated discussion, um, we are not trying to communicate in a way that the first person feels love. Sometimes we're not even listening. It's like double dutch. We're just waiting to get our turn to say what we need to say. And
Mhm.
you already know what you're going to say, but you haven't even heard what the person said. So that's why your statement, how you listen, is probably the one of the most important parts of communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to like highlight too with that like grace filled. Like if you're listening and you're having grace to what is being said, especially if it's a conversation that's difficult. I'll share this like quick story with that because God is, listen, He's still working on me and Carlos and our relationship. And there's still moments that, I'm like, Carlos might be like, you're still having expectations of me. And I'm like, no, I'm not. That's not an expectation, like, and so we're still like being like molded and just worked on, right? But this whole communication piece, it was when the whole time of George Floyd's situation happened, right? I grew up in a Puerto Rican home, right? So one of the things, and which is really so much about all of this, like, and my gaps or the things that I struggled with. I struggled with identity at the end of the day, right? So I never felt like I fit anywhere, right? I was too Puerto Rican to be black. I was too black to be Puerto Rican. And I was definitely nowhere near white. So it was just like, where do I fit in, right? And so I always struggled with that. And so we didn't grow up in a home that was teaching us about slavery and about black history and, whatever. It just wasn't a thing. So I didn't raise my kids that way, even though their father is from Bermuda. He's black, right? So so when this whole like everything started happening, it it brought my blackness out, right? Like it was like You ain't white, you're Puerto Rican, but you look black. Like, but then it really, I have a son and we have struggled with my son, but it made me realize in that moment, or reminded me, I should say, that like I have a son who could be affected by this, right? My son in law was living with us at the time. I have a black son in law who could be affected by this. I have a grandson, right? So all this was going. So we sat around the table one day and I was like, let's talk. And we called like a family meeting. My kids hate it. And I was like, we want to check in. How are you all feeling? And we go around the table. And I think, like, I don't know if Carlos went first, but one person may have spoken. And then Carlos goes, and mind you, God will check you with the exact thing that you say, right? So I say I don't like small talk. Well, Carlos is the most straightforward person you will probably find. And then it drives me crazy because I'm like, you could have said that a little nicer, right? So he speaks in this meeting and he's like, we're, all like, we're feeling all these emotions. And he's just like, what? Like this happens everywhere. Like it's happening here. We're just kind of now the people that are being affected by it type of thing. And when I tell you I could have filed for divorce that day and been like, I am done, right? Because I was like, in my head, I didn't say it at the table because we're with the kids and they're all there and they didn't need any more stress. But I just remember thinking, and we had a conversation, I addressed it after. I was like, how insensitive could you be? We have black boys sitting around this table and you sat there and you said like basically like so what, it happens all over the place, like so then I'm going into like what are you racist, like what is like, so I'm thinking all these things, okay. um and and then of course the kids were like what, you know I there had to be grace in that moment. And even after, because we had a conversation after, and I was like, how could you say that? Like, like how could you say that? And he was just like, what do you mean? He's like, Americans are so blah 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 blah. Like, there's so many countries that are being persecuted all the time. Da da da. But then here Americans deal with it, or a certain race. There's races all over the world that are dealing with this. And I'm like, I don't care what other races are, you know what I mean? Like I just had all these emotions. And then, it led into like, you don't know what it's like to be, black and to, be in a workplace and be, it was just like all these feelings. I had to take a step back and like pray because I was like, I don't know if I could ever, like, how could I see him differently, right? Like it was all these emotions. Um, and I just had to really like come to a place of grace and understanding. Carlos was in the military for 25 years. He was trained to see things this way. He was trained and he saw what other people in other countries went through. Like, so here's a man that's been brainwashed, really, in a sense, right? To think this way. And then he's trained to just execute, to do, to. So I had to like put it all into context and see his heart. Because my kids would sometimes be like, how do you do it? And I was like, and my response began to be, I see his heart. He's got a good heart. Like, I know his heart. He might say it this way, he doesn't mean it that way. So I just think like learning to listen to him and, or my kids, or, and understand when they're speaking from a place of pain, when they're speaking from a place of how they were raised, when they're speaking from a place of whatever, something maybe triggered them, and just having that grace and putting my feelings aside. And then we just get so much further. So that was long winded, but yeah.
But it was the idea of understanding the person and what they need and where they are coming from. On page 85, you say, communicate, don't leave them guessing.
Mhm.
To be clear and let your thoughts be known. Letting your thoughts, feelings, and desires known in a loving way. I think that's the key. Not in a defensive, interrogating, or harsh way is important. Now, while in that scenario that you just gave, Carlos had a different opinion than yours, and then you challenged yourself to take a step back and understand where he was coming from. In the heat of a discussion, when do we or do we take the time to do that? And I think I saw something in the chat from someone who said, we were talking about listening to people, and I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it was from Christina, where when she says, "What do you do when they don't want to listen?"
Yeah, that's good. Um, I think it, what's the saying? Like you can, whatever, something with honey, you can get more with honey or whatever it is. Um, there are plenty of times that either probably I don't want to listen, Carlos doesn't want to listen, my kids definitely don't listen. And I think that all of this has been about building relationship. And I think when you build a relationship with someone and they see that this is not about me trying to control you, manipulate you. It's not, yeah, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Yeah. Like, I just, um, I just started to realize like my girls would come to me and they would be sharing all of their beliefs and their new way of thinking and how God is in everything and God is in all of us and the God in the world and like just which yes, but they're just new ways of thinking. And the old Carrie would have been like, "Girl, listen, God is in heaven. Yes, he is everywhere. He is here, but the universe and all that, let's leave that nonsense somewhere else, right?" But I had to get to this place where I was like again like listening to them and building that relationship with them where they didn't just see me like judging them and criticizing what they said and going against them. And it took time because even there were times that my girls would be like, "Well, mom, what she thinks about that." And they don't even say that anymore because now we have this relationship of like, let's talk about that. Like, right? Like, "Oh, okay, you think that? Well, I think this." But like, and now when I see like my oldest daughter in church, like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, this is right. This is it." It's like raise up your children the way they should go, right? So when they're older, they don't depart. So it's like that, like, have your conversations, listen, and it'll come a time that they're either going to listen at some point and they might never listen. But I just believe in the power of prayer. And I think specifically with relationships in terms of marriage, I think you just have to really determine when the relationship is so unhealthy and so toxic, abusive, like whatever, that it is not where God would want you to be. Like it is, the relationship is just, you cannot repair it, right? Um, versus we just really disagree on a lot of things. Carlos and I disagree on so many things still. But like, is that a deal breaker? Is that affecting, like, is that crossing the line of my values of like who God has made me and created me to be? Like, my purpose? Is he damaged? Like, what does that? So you have to really just determine this person not listening. Am I just kind of hurt? Is my ego kind of wounded a little bit or, nicked or triggered or whatever because they're not listening to what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is could be right, right? And it could be an amazing thing. Or is this really unhealthy? And is this now a place where I need to put distance or whatever? So I think it's just healthy boundaries and really understanding what is that person not listening to. Yeah.
And like you said, it's going to take some time because
Mhm.
sometimes you have to build up your trust equity with,
Absolutely.
and they may be at a point where they're not really trusting you yet.
Mhm.
So it will come as you continue to pray, as you continue to trust, and as you continue to invest in the relationship, you will build trust equity to the point where they can now listen to you. So thank you for that question. We are going to have a space for questions and answers in a bit. And like I said, this book is amazing. We just wanted to highlight a few of the chapters. So we just highlighted the first three, but chapter 4 talks about self-control, and Carrie, makes a great statement about get control of your mind, or your mind will control you. Chapter 5, the title is Reflect and Project. Sometimes we just have to remember in the midst of difficulties why we fell in love. Reflect on why God brought you together to begin with. Chapter 6 is amazing. It's called Believe. And then chapter 7 is Take Action, which is a call to action to implement all the things that you've read in the previous 6 chapters. But there is a part in chapter 6, which is entitled Believe. It's on page 156, if you're following along, that I just wanted Carrie to read to us, because I think it very succinctly puts together all the chapters and explains how, I think it just explains her journey and how she has come to be where she is now. So again, it's on page 156. So Carrie, if you didn't mind, I love to hear authors read their own words, because I think they put inflections where it needs to be. And so it helps us to really understand. So again, it's on page 156. If you could read for us a little
Yeah.
bit.
But after my first marriage failed, I felt myself on the hamster wheel of life again, running in this cycle of seeking to feel significant to people in my life. I didn't realize how selfish I was being, as I was going through life always looking for what others could give to me. While I thought I was the most selfless person, I would do anything and everything for everyone and anyone. It was just my mask. The mask I wore was to do in hopes that you get something in return. Even though it was a desire to be appreciated and recognized, my approach was all wrong. I was so tired of feeling invisible to the world. I wasn't connected with others in a healthy way because I had lost my connection with myself. When I realized that this lack of connection was the root cause of my relationship problems, my life changed. When I began working through the steps of forgiveness, learning and having unconditional love, improving communication, having self control over my thoughts and actions, and taking time to reflect and project, setting goals and taking action, my life began to be transformed. I finally began to believe in me. I redefined who I was and wanted to be. What people thought of me no longer mattered. As I had clarity of who I was and what I wanted, I began believing in who I was becoming and who I had already been. I stopped allowing the person I was to be blinded by unforgiveness, guilt, and the lies I told myself and believed. I was buried under all the opinions and judgments of myself and others. And when I let go and moved forward, walking in my calling, my life changed. I was able to begin believing in my relationship and take my marriage to the next level. I was no longer in it for what I could get out of it, but I was in it because of what my calling and purpose was, to love hard regardless of what I got from it.
Amen. Period. At the end of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your transparency. I want to thank Carlos for even being on the call and listening to all of this. I thank you. I thank you for the example, the initial example of God that you were to her when you first forgave her, and as you continue to do so. But even in saying that, you were an example of God, and Carrie, had to realize that you weren't God, that you weren't her father, that you are Carlos, and you present and you are your own unique person that God has brought back into her life. Your love story is so sweet. The fact that you knew her when she was little Carrie, and you guys separated and went off and did your own thing and lived your own life. And then God brought you back together. And let's be clear, she pursued you.
Right.
So here you are, the father of many, grandfather to even more. But we are just so, so grateful to you. Can we give it up for Carlos Vasquez? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being here. Carrie, thank you for your transparency. If you don't have it, go out and grab it. The link is going to be put in the chat. It will cause you to re-examine yourself. And again, as I stated, it gives you journaling opportunities, check-ins. It gives you the love work space to write it all down and to journal your thoughts and feelings after you read each chapter. And so I think there is a study that says when you write things down, it has a deeper effect and you remember it even greater. So and then I think what would be interesting about this book is to kind of look back, let's say in October, November, after you've done all the work, and just to look back and see where you were at the time and compare it to where you are so you can see the growth. So thank you again, Carrie, for challenging us. So Mira, if you could put in the chat all the ways that we can jump into Carrie Vasquez world, her IG, her Facebook, all the things, her website. And as you know, she's a coach. And I believe you could tell us, Carrie, what's next for you?
Yeah, so I was so grateful, Lori, for this space and for, I want to say months, but I'm gonna shamefully say probably years. God has been calling me back to this book. I'm always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I just started to feel God like, mm-mm, you need to go back to the beginning. And so like I said, I had these groups and I did all these things. So May 4th, I believe is the date. Yeah, May 4th, I'm going to restart a group, and it's going to be a Recreate You group, but we'll go through the book. Like I used to go through the book every week, but it'll be 8 weeks so that eighth week we can really just like unpack and any final things and things like that. So I have that and some other things coming, but that's probably the biggest thing that I'm bringing back and that I'm grateful to be to it's my next thing. So yeah, so all that information is in the chat.
Oh, great, 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 great. Looking forward to that. And again, thank you all for being here so much. And if you could just put on your calendars um, our next session, which will be Saturday, May the 2nd, and we will be highlighting a book in commemoration of Mother's Day. And of course, Mother's Day, we celebrate not only mothers of children, but mother figures, aunties, godparents, grandmothers, anyone who's a mother figure to anyone. We want to celebrate you. So we're going to kick it off on Saturday, May 2nd with the book Hiding and Fear, Becoming Her Again. And this book was written by Lachey Johnson. And so if you want to, you can find this book on Amazon. And so you can, that will be our next book, and we're going to be celebrating mothers. And the idea is that because of so many of our responsibilities as women, we tend to hide behind those responsibilities and not do what God has called us to do in addition to the raising of the family, the raising of the children, the taking care of the home. There's more to be done for some of us, and we just want to highlight that. And she does through this book. So I'm hoping you'll be able to join us. So mark your calendars again, May 2nd. Once again, help me celebrate Carrie and Carlos. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate you. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. And we hope to see you guys really soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.